Good morning, students. My voice is audible and can you see my screen? Can you please confirm? Yes, students, my voice is audible. Can you see my screen? Can you please confirm?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So let me wait for a few other participants, then I'll start the session. Okay, fine, students. So let me start the session. In today's class, we shall discuss about exceptional handling. Okay. So under this exception handling, we are going to discuss what is an exception types, use of try, catch, throws, and finally, then multiple and nested try, and then creating our own type of exceptions, then checked and unchecked exceptions. So all these concepts you are going to study under the title called exceptional handling. Okay, so let us begin with what is an exception. So an exception is nothing but it's an abnormal condition that arises in a code sequence at runtime. In other words, we call exception as a runtime error, right? Now let us go to this definition. So it says that what is an exception? It says that exception is nothing but it's an abnormal condition where it arises. It's an abnormal condition. It's an abnormal condition that arises. Where it arises in code sequence, and when it arises during runtime. So what it means, for example, you've written a source code. You've written a source code. In other words, you've written a Java code. You've written a Java code. So once you write your Java code, what you are going to do, you are going to compile. How you are going to compile? You are going to compile using a tool called Java C. You are going to compile using a tool called Java C. So once you compile, okay, let us assume that there are no errors. If there are no errors, what's going to happen? A bytecode will be created. In other words, a dot class file will be created. We call this dot class file as bytecode. I think I've discussed several times, right? A dot class file is created and we call this dot class file as bytecode. We call this dot class file as byte. We call this dot class file as bytecode. Okay. So I written a Java code and the code we call it as source code. And once I compile, let us assume the compilation is successful. So once a compilation is successful, it's going to produce a dot class file and we call this dot class file as a bytecode. So once we have a dot class file, we are going to run the program. So in order to run the program, we are going to use a tool called Java. In order to run the program, we are going to use a tool called Java. So once I run the program during runtime, I'm going to get the errors. Once I run the program, I'm going to get the errors. As you notice, students, when I'm trying to compile the program, there are no errors. So since there are no errors, a dot class file has been created. But once I try to run this program, there are some errors, and we call this error as a runtime error. And we call this error as a runtime error. And why we call this error as a runtime error is because during runtime, when I'm running the program at runtime, I got the error. Since I got the error during runtime, we call this as runtime error. This runtime error is nothing but we call it as an exception. What is an exception? To say simple, an exception is a runtime error. That is, when you run the program at runtime, you're going to get an error, and we call that error as a exception. Is it right, students? I hope you understood this. Yes, what is an exception? An exception is nothing but it is a runtime error. That is, when you compile the program, you won't get any errors. You'll get a dot class file. But when I run the program, at runtime, I'm going to get errors. And we call these errors as runtime error. And this runtime error is nothing but it's an exception. We call this as an exception. An exception is nothing but it's a runtime error. Right, students? Okay, fine. So let me illustrate this with a small example. Yeah, consider the following code. Yeah. Now in this block of code, can you find any error? In this block of code, can you find any error, students? Yeah. So now what we should do, this is the source code. Okay. This everything is my source code. This everything is my source code. This is my source code. This is my source code. Now what the source code I have to do? The source code, what I should do? I need to compile. How to compile? In order to compile, I need to use a tool called Javac and followed by the file name. So what file name I need to pick? You see that. And what is the name of the class? The name of the class is exe0. So therefore, I need to compile like this, Javac followed by the file name, that is exe0.jar. I'm going to compile. So once I compile successfully, let us assume the compilation is successful. So once the compile is successful, it's going to create a .class file. And what is the name of the .class file? The name of the .class file is nothing but it is the name of the class, that is exe0. exe0. A .class file will be created. So once a .class file has been created, what I need to do? I need to run this program. In order to run this program, I need to write Java followed by .class file, that is exe0. Okay. Now, if I run this program, it throws an error. You see that when I'm trying to compile the program, at compilation time, there is no error. But once I start running this program, at runtime, I'm going to get an error, and we call this error as a runtime error. In other words, we call this as a exception. So any runtime error, we're going to call it as an exception. Now, in this block of code, can you tell which statement might throw a runtime exception, or sorry, which statement might throw an exception? Can you tell, students, in this block of code? In this block of code, can you tell which statement might throw a runtime error? You see that, as you know, that control execution begins from main method. So inside this main method, I written int d equals 0. So when I'm compiling the program, the compiler compiles the statement successfully. Next, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to divide 42 by d. So at the compilation time, this statement also is correct because I'm trying to divide, right? It is successful. But when I'm trying to run the program, what's going to happen? This statement does not throw any error. When I'm trying to run the program, I'm going to substitute the value of d. And what's the value of d? The value of d is 0. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to divide 42 by 0. Can we divide any number by 0? No, we cannot divide a number by 0. Since we cannot divide a number by 0, this statement, so this statement throws a runtime error. This statement throws a runtime error. And we call this runtime error as an exception. Call this runtime error as an exception. Is it right, students? So let me clear my drawings and let me illustrate this line. You see that? So this statement is going to throw an exception. So what exception is trying to throw? This is the exception it is trying to throw. What exception is trying to throw? It's trying to throw an exception called arithmetic exception. Okay, so this statement, this line, this statement is trying to throw an exception called arithmetic exception. So what is an exception? An exception is nothing but a runtime error. So what is a runtime error? When you run the program during runtime, you are going to get the error. We call that as an exception. So now what type of exception is throwing? It is throwing an exception called arithmetic exception. Why it is throwing an arithmetic exception? You see that I'm trying to divide 42 by 0. We can't divide a number by 0. We can't divide a number by 0. So therefore, it's throwing arithmetic exception. Why the word called arithmetic came? You see that division by 0. So division is nothing but an arithmetic operation, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all these are arithmetic operations, right? So since I'm doing wrong arithmetic operations, so that's why it's throwing an arithmetic exception. Okay, since I'm trying to divide, so division is an arithmetic operation. So therefore, here it is throwing an arithmetic exception. Okay, now here you see that. So why? So next, let me clear it. Yeah, that's what it's arithmetic exception. And next, as you noticed here, yeah, you noticed here I'm having a division by 0. Okay, this division by 0 is nothing but it's a description of this exception. So this we call this Students, my voice is audible. It's a problem with the internet connection. My voice is audible. Can you see my screen? Can you please confirm?
Yes, sir.
Fine. Okay, fine. So as you know that, so this statement that is 42 divided by the, it is throwing an exception. So what type of exception it is trying to throw? It is trying to throw an arithmetic exception. Why it is throwing arithmetic exception? You see that here I'm trying to perform a division operation. Okay. Division is nothing but it's an arithmetic operation. So therefore it's throwing an exception called arithmetic exception. And you see that here after colon, you see that here after colon, I'm having a division by 0. This division by 0, it says that why this arithmetic exception has occurred. Okay, it's nothing but division by 0 is a description. It says that why this arithmetic exception has occurred. Why this arithmetic exception has occurred? This arithmetic exception has occurred because here I'm trying to divide by 0. So since I'm trying to divide by 0, here I'm going to get an exception called arithmetic exception, right? As you notice, students, here, before arithmetic exception, I'm having a java.lang. Have you noticed java.lang? What is this java.lang? See, java.lang is a package. Let us assume this is a package. This entire circle is a package. And inside this package, I'm having a class called arithmetic exception. Inside this package, I'm having a class called arithmetic exception. Now, what is the name of this package? The name of this package is nothing but is java.lang. Assume that the name of the package is java.lang. And inside this package, I have a class called arithmetic exception. Now, how to access this? A class called arithmetic exception. In order to access this, first I need to begin with the name of the package. That is Java. That is java.lang. Java.lang. It is the name of the package. Java.lang is the name of the package. In this package, I'm having a class called arithmetic exception. That is .e. Actually, you should not write AE, you should write arithmetic exception. But in short, I've written AE. AE stands for arithmetic exception. In exam, you should not write AE. You should write full name, that is arithmetic exception. That's what it says. Java.lang arithmetic exception. That's what the meaning says. I hope you understood this. So this arithmetic exception is the name of the class. Arithmetic exception is the name of the class. Okay, and this class is present. This class is present in a package called java.lang. This class is present in a package called java.lang. So therefore, you're getting something like this. That is java.lang arithmetic exception, right? Yeah. Next, you see that, the next statement describes where this arithmetic exception has occurred. Okay, it says that exe.main. What is this exe.main? So exe means it is the name of the class. This is the name of the class. You see that is the name of the class. In this class, I have a method called main method. In this class, I have a method called main method. You see that inside the class called ex0, I have a main method. Okay, so in this main method, the exception has occurred at line number 4. That's what it says. You see that? That's what it says. exe0.main. What is that? Ex is the name of the class. This class is having a main method. In this main method, the above exception, that is java.lang arithmetic exceptions, has occurred at line number 4. You see that? This is line number 1. This is line number 2. This is line number 3. This is line number 4. Is it right? 1 second, students. Yeah, fine, students. I hope understood. You see the students, it is at line number 4. See, this is the statement. This is the statement which is trying to throw an arithmetic exception. So that's what it says. And next you see that exe0.java. What is exe0.java? It's the file name. It is a file name. Means in this file, that's what it says. In exe0.java, in this file name, there is a class called exe0, and inside this class called exe0, there is a main method, and inside this main method, an exception has occurred at line number 4. What exception has occurred? That's what the above statement says. That is java.lang arithmetic exception. And why this arithmetic exception has occurred? This exception has occurred because here I'm trying to divide by 0. So like this, you need to read your exception. So whenever your exceptions occur, so these are you need to interpret. Okay. So when you run this program, My internet connection is not stable. Okay, fine, students. I hope you understood, right? Students, any questions you have up to now? The connection is going up and down, but anyhow. Any questions, students? Yeah, no questions. That's well and good. And one more thing here I would like to discuss. You see that arithmetic is one word. Arithmetic is one word, right? Arithmetic is one word. Exception is second word. I said arithmetic exception is the name of the class. So with respect to name of the class, the first letter of the first word must be in uppercase, and the first letter of the second word must be in uppercase. So that's why you see that A and E are in uppercase. That's very, very important observation. You need to make it out, right? A and E are in uppercase, right? Yeah. So let me clear my drawing. So let me put some animations for you. Yeah. So arithmetic exception is the exception type. So what type of exception? Actually, there are several types of exception out there. Here the exception type is arithmetic exception. Why it is arithmetic exception? Because here I'm trying to perform a division by zero. So this division is nothing but an arithmetic operation. This division is an arithmetic operation, right? So since it's an arithmetic operations, I'm getting an exception type as arithmetic exception, right? Yeah. So next, you see that java.lang is a name of the package, right? Next, that's what A and E must be in uppercase. That's now discussed because arithmetic is one word, exception is second word. Okay, the first word almost must be in the uppercase. Why? Because arithmetic exception is the name of the class. And next followed by colon. And followed by colon, I'm having division by zero. The division by zero says that why this exception has occurred. In other words, it describes the exception, right? And next it says that adds name of the class, that is ex0 is the name of the class. Next main is the method name, and ex0.java is the file name, and 4 is nothing but the line number, right? So all these things I have discussed, right? So whenever there's an exception, that's very, very important thing, students. Let me remove all this. See. Okay, fine. See, whenever there's an exception, you see that this statement throws an exception. Okay, this statement throws an exception, or this statement throws an error. This statement throws an error. Okay. This statement throws an error, right? So whenever there's a runtime error, we call this as a runtime error, or we call this an exception. So whenever there's a runtime error, your program halts its execution. Your program halts. The program halts its execution. The program halts its execution. So whenever there is a runtime error in a program, the program halts its execution. What is halting? Means I'm not going to continue. Since this line is throwing an error, I'm going to terminate. My program terminates. My program terminates abruptly. My program terminates. Why my program terminates? Because there is a runtime error. Whenever there is a runtime error, my program does not continue to the next statement. Whenever I repeat, students, whenever there's a runtime error, my program does not continue to the next statement. So whenever there's an error, my program terminates and it throws an exception, something like that. Okay. So how to handle an exception? So in order to handle an exception, so this exception has to be handled. We need to handle this exception. Why we need to handle this exception? In case you're not handling this exception, my program terminates. In other words, my program stops its execution. So therefore, this exception has to be handled. So how to handle this exception? So in order to handle this exception, we are going to use the 5 important keywords. Using these 5 important keywords, what we can do, we can handle this exception. So we call this as exceptional handling. Okay, this exception has to be handled. So in order to handle this exception, we are going to use these 5 important keywords. So that's why the name called exceptional handling. The exception has to be handled. So that's why they give the name called exceptional handling. How this exception can be handled? It can be handled by using these 5 important keywords, right? Yeah, this question is very, very important question. This in exam they'll ask, explain exceptional handling mechanism. Okay, in exam they'll ask, explain exception handling mechanism. So you need to write these 5 important keywords with respect to this exceptional handling mechanism. Right now, let us see how to handle this exception. Okay, how to handle this exception. Now, let me share my browser to you. Let me illustrate this with this. Students, you can see my screen, right? So here, let me write a small program. So let me write int d equal to 0, same program, right? So let int a equal to 42 divided by 0. Instead of 40 divided by 0, let me write 1. Let me write 1. Okay.
Sorry, your
My voice is breaking. Yeah, fine students, as a problem with internet connection. Now, yeah, here you can see the program, right? I have done a small change in this block of code. As you see that here, I've written int d equal 0, I written int a equal to 42 divided by 1, right? I can divide a 42 by 1. Yes, I can divide, right? And next I'm trying to print system.println hello world, right? So let me run the program. So when I run the program, I'll be expecting an output called hello world. Yeah, fine students. I hope that's a problem with internet connection. It's coming up and down. Anyhow, fine. I hope we can listen, right? Yeah. Now you see that here, students, I written int d equals 0, then I written int a equal to 40. Yeah, fine students. And I've changed my position and probably now we'll get proper internet connection. Yeah, fine. So let me discuss here. Yeah. Here written int d equals 0. And let me check here 1, right? And let me make it here d. So now what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to divide 42 by 1, right? Or can I divide a 42 by 1? Yes, yes, I can divide, right? And next I'm trying to print system.out.println hello world. Now, if I run the program, I need to get an output called hello world, right? And as you see here, I got the output called hello world, right? Because at the runtime, this statement is correct. This statement is correct and this statement is correct. So therefore, I'm trying to print hello world, right? Now let me do small modification to this block of code. Now instead of 1, I made it 0. And now let me run this program. Hey, let me pull it up. Yeah. As you see here at runtime, so this statement is correct. But what about this statement? What I'm trying to do, this statement says that I'm trying to divide 42 by 0. 42 by 0. Can I divide a number by 0? I can't divide a number by 0. So therefore, the statement throws an exception. Once an exception occurs, you see that it's going to print. In other words, my program has terminated. That's what I said. An exception has occurred, the program has terminated. In other words, it has stopped its execution. How I can tell that it has stopped its execution? Because as you notice that this statement has not been executed, that is hello world. Previously, you see that I got an output called hello world, but now you see that here I don't see hello world. Why I don't see any hello world? Because you see that this statement has thrown an exception. So once an exception occurs in a program, the program terminates. In other words, the program halts its execution and I'll get the corresponding exception, right? Yeah. You see that what is trying to throw is going describing something like this. I got an exception called java.lang.arithmetic exception. It's telling that I got this exception. And what is the description of this exception? So why I got this exception? Because here I'm trying to divide by 0. Okay. And where I got this exception, it's showing that at main.main. You see that this M, what's the name of my class? There is main. M is in uppercase. In this class called main, I have a method called main. You see that I have a method called main. And in this, at line number 13, this exception has occurred. You see that? You see that this is at line number 13. At line number 13, I got this exception. And what is the name of the file? The name of the file is nothing but it is main.java. Right now, the most important here you should observe is whenever there's an exception. So whenever there's an exception or whenever there's an error, whenever there's a runtime error in a program, the program halts its execution. The program terminates. The subsequent statements, that is this statement or any other statements, will not be executed. So therefore, a runtime error is very, very dangerous. So this runtime errors, what we need to handle this runtime errors. In other words, we need to handle this exception. So how to handle this exception? And that's what we have seen. In order to handle this exception, let me share my screen. So how to handle this exception? How to handle this exception? So this exception will be handling, yeah. So these are the 5 important keywords. So this exception can be handled by using this 5 important keywords, that is try, catch, throws, and finally, right? Now let us discuss about these keywords. Before that, let us start with this try and catch. Let us discuss about this try and catch. Okay, so let me share my screen. Let me go back to this. Yeah. Now, so which statement is trying to throw an exception, students? This is the statement, that is int a equal to 42 divided by 3. 42 divided by d. This statement is trying to throw an exception. And as you see that this statement is dependent on the previous statement. Okay. So therefore, the block of code, I repeat, the block of code which throws an exception must be placed inside the try block. So let me place the try. It's coming automatically. 1 second. So try. Okay. Press enter. Open parenthesis. The block of code. So this is a block of code, right? This is a block of code which is trying to throw an exception. So the block of code which throws an exception must be placed inside your try block. Okay, so this is a block of code which throws an exception must be placed inside your try block. So why I'm placing these 2 statements? Because this statement is trying to throw an exception and this statement is dependent on the previous statement. So therefore, these 2 statements I'm trying to place inside my try block. Okay, so when we should pick this try block? So any block of code which might throw an exception must be placed inside your try block. And for every try block must have a corresponding catch block. For every try block must have a corresponding catch block. Okay, for every try block, we should have a corresponding catch block. And inside this catch block, you need to mention the type of exception. Inside this catch block, we need to mention the type of exception which might occur. So what type of exception it may occur? So that's now we are seeing it may occur arithmetic exception followed by the name of the variable, that is E, followed by the name of the variable. Then and after writing catch block, then you should open this opening floor brace and closing floor brace, right? Now you see that. Now listen very carefully. So this statement, so when you run this program, this statement might throw an exception. This statement will throw an exception. This statement will throw an exception. Okay, this statement will throw an exception. Okay, when exception is thrown, who is going to catch? This catch block is going to catch the exception, and the code inside this catch block will get executed. So after executing code inside the catch block, the control moves to the next statement of your catch block, that is allow board. It gets executed. Is it right, students? I hope. Let me make it clear. See, there's a person here. Okay, this person, what he's trying to do? This person is trying to throw the ball. This person is trying to throw the ball. This person is trying to throw the ball. When a person is trying to throw the ball, there should be some person who has to catch this ball. Should be some person who has to catch this ball. He has to catch this ball. Is it right, students? The one person is throwing. What is throwing? He's throwing the ball. When he's throwing the ball, there should be some person who needs to catch this ball. Here also the same thing has happened. Okay. Here also what's going to happen? Okay. With respect to this statement, an exception is thrown. With respect to this statement, an exception is thrown. What is thrown, students? Arithmetic exception. Okay. With respect to this statement, an arithmetic exception is thrown. When arithmetic exception is thrown, this exception has to be caught. This exception has to be caught. This exception has to be caught. This exception has to be caught, or this exception has to be catched. Who is going to catch this exception? Is the catch block. Is the catch block who is going to catch this exception. Is it right? So that's why when exceptions occurs, the control moves immediately inside this catch block, and the code inside the catch block will get executed. And let me illustrate this. So let me write here. Right here. Inside catch. Right. Now let me run this program. Let me wait for the output. It will come. Let me run again. It's taking some time. Okay. So let me refresh. Run again. It's taking time. Students, it's not coming. Students, in case the session gets terminated, you can use the same link to rejoin again, right? Yeah, fine. No, it's not coming. Fine, now I got the output. You can see that here, students, I got the output called inside catch. You see that? That's what I said. Whenever arithmetic exceptions occur,